Yeah.
So we will just give brief about Sri Varshini who is here. So Sri Varshini works as a senior UX researcher in RealPage, and she has also mentored many folks in design. And also she has been our batchmate in our master's course. So we know that she is someone who can help us understand the complete process and solve everyone's doubts as well. So mostly focus would be on understanding the design thinking process in better way, and which would be followed by a real case study example on how the frameworks or basics can be applied in a scenario. Because when you would be doing case studies, you will get a brief idea about okay how you can do case study by using the framework. So I won't talk much about it. Maybe Varshin, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Atha and Praveen, for inviting me, and it's glad to be here to talk about design, which I always love to do. So I planned this session today in two ways. Like one would be, I mean, initially I'm thinking to walk you through an interesting case study that I found, which is about how they used design thinking, or how you have to use design thinking to solve the problem. And maybe we can start off with just thinking, okay, if without even knowing what is design thinking, if we were asked to solve that problem, then how would we do, and then how design can be used to solve that problem. And after that, I will go through the details about the design thinking process, what goes into it, and then what are the different sections that you have to take care about. And I think after that, maybe Pratyush or Pravins will be sharing their case studies that they have done as part of their master's degree program, which I'm also excited to see. So, uh, yeah, so that's what I'm planning to do. So I think I'm really glad to know that many of you have read the book at least to the half, and then have some idea about design, which will make my job more easier to communicate what is design about. So So I've taken a case study from a company called IDEO. I hope if anybody knew what is IDEO, you can just raise your hands and give me a brief about what do they do. If not, I can just walk you through. Don't have
मैंने
an
जस्ट
idea.
वो पॉडकास्ट में सुना था वो आइडियो के बारे
Uh-huh.
में.
Acha, okay. Okay, so IDEO is a, design consulting company where they extensively use design thinking in solving problems. So they get problems from all the parts of the world. Like it is not particularly for software products, or it is not just for a physical product. So they are like a problem solving company. So they can solve any problem with world hunger to your core problem in your software. So that's how they use design thinking process, and they nailed it so well. So I'm going to share a case study that it was very interesting for me about how they use design thinking to solve this problem. Okay. Mm, Let me know if you can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Okay, cool. So, so here I will briefly explain you about the problem. So, what is the problem here that they were trying to solve is, so whenever, imagine you are going with your sister's children to the hospital, and they have to get an injection or should get a medicine, and the kind of trauma that these kids create by looking at the environment, by looking at the equipment that the doctor uses, and then how can you make the experience of children being at the clinic very seamlessly and also enjoyable be and playfully, right? So transforming sick days with play. So whenever the child is sick, how can you transform that? So this is the example. This is the final product that they made by taking the problem. So and it also received best inventions in 2025, and it this is like, I feel this is really interesting way to solve this problem. So when this is a brief about what exactly they did, because they didn't really consider the parent or the doctor, how they would feel. They considered how the child would feel. So at the end of the day, when you solve the problem, you have to solve for the child. So if the child is doing good, then in everybody around, will be of course will be doing good. So they have taken that into consideration. So what they did is they went to these clinics. They were observing how children were reacting to certain things, how doctors were trying to mitigate that reaction that they're getting from the children, and how are parents feeling because of this. So they try to observe this, they try to document all of their notes, they did some interview, they did some ethnographic studies, like just observing from beside, not even involving into the process, just looking at them, observing everything what's happening and documenting that each phase into phase, like today morning, what happened, in the afternoon what happened, in the evening what happened, so all of that. So they did this study for a certain period of time, and after that they went back and then they sat and then they were trying to identify, where exactly is the problem, because they got so much of data. So they were trying to categorize this data into different buckets, doing like an affinity mapping. They just try to club same things together, different things together, and then they were trying to make sense of what they have heard about. So by doing that, so I'll share this link in the chat. You can just go through more in detail about what exactly it is about. But after that they try to think about the solution. So they did multiple variations of the solutions to see whether what would work, what not would work. They did multiple testings, and at the end, they made something like this, which is really interesting for somebody who's really scared about getting an injection or wanted to get a tonic into their mouth. And how can you make that experience more delightful? How can you make somebody take a medicine with happier smile on their face? So that's what they were aiming to do, and they made this solution by doing multiple iterations, and then trying to have contact with the uh, clinicians, with the doctors, with the patients, and with the kids as well, so the kids actually feel good about what they use. So that's what they did, and this is how it would look like. So I feel they are really interested about to try this product and see what exactly it is. So I think if kids really want to keep uh, whatever is interesting for them in their mouth, so I think that's what they probably had did that. So yeah, so this is the project I felt really interesting to share, which really follows design thinking principles and use it in a much better way. So yeah, any questions that you guys have here, or do you think we can solve it in much a better way, or any thoughts on that? Let me just go here. I'll share the link in the chat so you can just go through.
While doing the complete case, they only consider the child's perspective.
Not just the child, they considered all the personas who are involved in the environment. So we have patient, who's the child, we have parent, we also have the doctor.
But the main focus was completely transforming the experience of the child itself, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because you are building it for the child, but see, the product is used by the doctor, but the experience is getting delivered to the child, right? So in that case, you have to think in the both of the ways. You can't just give it to the child and ask him to use it, right? So it's both the ways, and the parent also should be able to use it. So considering all the three different perspectives, but also thinking that okay, the end experience or the delight that they will be getting through using this is for the child as well as the parent. So the parent really don't have to struggle a lot for them to give the medicine to the child. So it's both the ways, I would say. Yes, Kritika.
I don't know the validity of this question, but the end buyer would be the doctor, right? For whom the product is made, like the person who's buying the product.
It could be the doctor, it could be the parent as well.
Okay. Because I was thinking from the point of view of a doctor, their incentive to buy it, like, is it completely emotional because the kid is obviously struggling? Or, I mean, because if they are buying it, they're the one who are paying, but it's made for considering the experience of the child.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, you have a pediatrist who's a child doctor, and then how do he or she would get a better fame is with the service that they provide. And it's also about how do they treat children. If there is a pediatrician who is really harsh and who don't really care about the child's state of mind, or they just forces the medicine to the child, then why would a parent choose that person? Right. So that's also a point for the doctor to think about. Okay, if I get this, people would come to me because the child is going to enjoy the time that they will be in the hospital. So it's also, yeah, it's an advantage for both of them. It also depends on how do they position themselves by using this product. Yes, Nimisha.
Yes, actually, I wanted to understand like when they were developing the solution for this, did like how exactly did they start? For example, did they have a goal in mind that we want to enhance actually the experience of the child, or by spending time in the hospital or living the life there, did they identify ki, okay, this was the problem and it's actually worth pursuing? So what was exactly the realization made there when they were identifying the solutions for this?
Yeah. So in when you follow design thinking process, you don't have goals initially defined.
Oh,
So it's a
hmm,
very broad perspective. So you try to think from all different perspectives. You actually
hmm,
go and see whether is it a problem or not,
hmm,
right? And what is the
okay.
root cause of the problem? Right. So there could be multiple insights that people would get after doing this study by observing and doing, so many interviews. So later that they would sit and do the analysis and then think, okay, this is could be our goal, which will help in solving the problem that we identified. So
Hmm.
that process of you going there, observing, doing interviews, going in and talking to people, observation, all of that will be a foundation to for you to define the goal.
Got it. Okay. So the identifying of the problem is what happened first, and that's so. Was there a possibility wherein they would have probably identified, multiple such problems? They might have focused on something, let's say, a problem that they might face between just the parents and the
Yeah,
doctor or something like that. So
yeah.
when did they realize, ki, okay, if they choose this combination of doctor and then focusing on the kids is where maximum impact would be created?
Yeah, so I
How
think
did they realize?
that goes from by doing analysis, and also what is the outcome that you want to generate. Your outcome and your goal are different, right? So I mean,
Oh,
when you achieve the goal, you would achieve the outcome. But so when you think about who actually have come with the problem. So I'm assuming that the hospitals has come with the problem with to IDEO, saying that we are having this problem. We wanted to do some innovation in this
mhm.
particular field of the child enjoying their time in the hospital, right? So there could be multiple ways or multiple problems that they might have identified in the process of observation, interviews, and all of that, but they would try to categorize or try to prioritize the problems which are having child in the center.
Okay, understood.
So they wanted to I mean that also comes from the initial business goal that you wanted to have. So
Yeah. So there must have been some business goal attached
of
to it
course,
because of which they
yeah,
uh, decided to focus on keeping it child centric.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So all of your processes that you do in the design thinking should be tied to a business goal of what do you want to achieve from this? Like what is the segment, at least on a very high level, so that it would give you a direction on where do you want to go.
Got it. Understood.
Okay.
I think I had one question.
Yeah.
I think, as you mentioned, they must have started with a goal, which could be a business problem or a user problem.
Yeah.
And when I was going through this document now, one thing I realized was it mentioned they did multiple things
Yeah.
before coming to insights. Usually, I get confused because there are so many research methods which we can follow, so many things. So, how to decide which research method we should follow? First question. And second, is there a standard process which you recommend or something which gives me a base template? Okay, this is something I can start with, because whenever we are doing a research which is very broad, usually many research methods are there, multiple things we can do, but how to prioritize in that case? Because mostly I face this problem.
Yeah, I think prioritization comes from the point of view where the budget that you have. So you can conduct a very robust research with so much of budget included into, where you can actually have researchers come into place. You can, talk with, actual users, spend, quality amount of time with them, and do all of that if you really have time, if you really have budget, and if you really can afford it. So, based on your deadline of your project, based on the resources that are available for you, I think based on that, you can decide on which is the most effective way to choose the research method, and which method would give me the most outcome that that I require. Let's say, for example, in this case, so you have to go and understand what's exactly happening in the hospital, right, to make a decision, or to actually gather insights. Maybe you can do 2 to 3 visits to the hospital and actually see, maybe in nearby hospitals, and see how exactly people would react, how exactly a child is feels when he's going through that process. And maybe you can have like 1 2 conversations with the parents and the doctor as well, to get more insights. So based on the time, your budget and the resources that you have, I think it depends on that, on the method that you choose. So we will move to the basics about what is design thinking and what is the process, what are different things that we do as a part of design thinking. So I'll get started. Let me know if you can see my screen. So, introduction to design thinking. So, yeah, this is a background about me, what I did. So, I have around 7+ years of experience as a UX designer. So, I started working as an interaction designer in a design studio, where it was similar to IDEO, but not really that robust. So I worked on these domains, and then moved into healthcare, which was into more of a medical equipment designing and healthcare software. And now I'm in the real estate SaaS, where we do build softwares for real estate property management companies. So, coming to the topic that we have, what is actually design thinking? So, design thinking is a method to solve a problem, where it is always revolves around users. It always revolves around the challenges that the users have. What are the assumptions that you would come up with, and how can you build very innovative solutions. So it's always the user is the center of the design process, or the design thinking process, I should say. So business comes secondary, but always it's all about the users, thinking about them, because they are the people who are going to pay you. So you should have them as a first priority. I think that's where the design thinking process helps you a lot, to not just solve the problem, but also it could be used in any challenge that you face in your life, and you can apply this. And I bet you that it will work really well if you do it in the right way. So yeah, it's all about building, measuring, and learning from it, and again building. So it's a cyclic process that we follow. And in this whole design thinking process, we have 5 stages where you empathize, ideate, test, define, and prototype. So I'll go to the diamond model that we have. I hope this should be visible. If not, forgive me. I was trying to make it big, but it didn't happen in the last moment. Yeah, so this is the double diamond model that we have. So when you have this is general problem statement, the problem statement that I just mentioned before, the doctor has come up, doctor or the patient, sorry, the parent had come up with, they have this problem with the child and they wanted to solve this problem. So that's a general problem statement that they came up with. So what you do in the process is, the first is discovery and research, where you actually go to the field, you understand what are the user needs, where exactly is the need, in which environment they are having this problem, and how are they feeling about this problem, and what do they think the solution could work for them. So unlike getting all that data as much as you can, so that's why it's actually this two-way which is diverging. So your perspective, or you're open to whatever that comes into your way. So you accept everything that comes into your way, and then you gather everything. And after that you move to define insights stage, where you got all of this, and then you are trying to analyze what exactly would matter. How can I categorize these things? There are different methods and tools that we use in each stage to make it more easier to gather gather the outcome for each stage. So there are certain artifacts that we use, processes that we follow to make it more easier to focus on deliver. So in this stage you try to define initial ideas, which is more like you try to converge, where you pick up something which is really impactful. You'll have certain metrics that you might just define for your process and say, okay, I wanted to take the insights from the research which are very impactful. And also you can measure the impact. I mean, how much impact you are expecting that this need would create. This is also an assumption, so you just assume that, and then you try to gather all of this and these things, and then probably you'll have 3 to 4 ideas by the end of this phase that you would converge. And then you define your problem, and this is exactly the place where whatever your problem that you have here might completely change in this stage, because you did a lot of research, you did the analysis, and it might not be the real problem that you wanted to solve, because there could be some deep problem which might already have solved this problem. So the definition of the problem here would come from all these process that you do. And after this, you have the problem that you wanted to solve, which you have been validated from your research. You know that this is the problem people are facing, and if you solve this problem, people are going to pay you to buy that solution. So here is where you try to ideate and brainstorm, like, okay, how best I can solve this problem by considering the feasibility, viability, scalability of the product, of the problem, right? The solution should come into fall into these places. And you might have multiple ideas, so it's diverging here, so it's out of the box, so you can just innovate as much as you can, try to put all the ideas together. And then you're trying to deliver and implement, prototype and test, where you actually pick ideas which are easy to implement, as I said, which falls into these 3 categories: feasibility, viability, and scalability. And then you try to get the ideas which you can test easily and then get some results. So that's where you do the prototyping of few of the ideas, and you get a solution, and then you test it again. So again you would try to take some other ideas and then do the testing. So this process is continuously going on, and then this also goes on, so where you would maybe find some other insights to be coming into picture. So the whole process is cyclic, and it goes on and goes on and goes on. um, I think there were some questions. We can stop. I mean, I don't want to stop here. Just try to put your questions in the chat. Or I'll stop in the midway and we can answer the question, and then I can move forward. Would that make sense? I will at least complete the first diamond part today, and we can move to the next part in the next session. I can't see the chat, so if there is anything in the chat, please let me know.
Yeah, I think sounds good. I think you can
Okay.
start with the first.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, this is the whole process, like empathizing first and then define. Empathizing is all the research that you do, and defining is, okay, after the research, how do you define? Or how do you analyze the data, and what is that you wanted to solve from that? And then you ideate, which is also wider perspective, and then you prototype, and then you test. So all the different stages has its very own importance, and all the stages has to be done to get the best innovated solution that you are looking out for. So the first thing that we have in the design thinking process is empathizing. So what is exactly is called empathizing? Empathizing is trying to be in the user's shoes and experience what they are experiencing. So that's when you actually understand the core problem, and that's when you actually think from user's perspective. You understand what are the needs, what are the wants, and also that's also very hard to do. You can't really I mean, it's easy to say to have shoes in your user, but to do that, it requires a lot of biases that you have in your mind to be kept aside, and experience of what they are experiencing. Maybe that could be by talking to the users that you want to experiences like in like as much as possible, trying to be with them, trying to understand what they are going through, or trying to behave like what they are doing, so that you at least try to replicate few of them, and then observe what's actually happening. Or you can uh, look at some videos, and sometimes when you really read about certain character a lot, you will become that character. So that's I would say an ideal way to empathize. So so you empathize with the user, and you empathize with the problem. At least when I say user, it's not just about their day-to-day life, but it's also about, okay, you are looking for a certain problem that they are facing, and you wanted to empathize the pain that the user is getting when they have that problem, and where exactly is the problem coming from, and then what how is the problem affecting the person. And so that's when this you try to do this empathy mapping after the observations that you do, after you collect all the data from the research. You do empathy mapping, which is like, it's a visualization technique where you say, okay, user is in the middle, and this is the quadrant where you just write what the user actually says. So sometimes people say that they don't really like sugars, or they wanted to cut on the sugars, but what they actually does, they do eat a lot of sugars. So what they say is actually contradicting to what they do. So that's really interesting to capture, and then see, okay, what exactly is making them to do that. Is it just a society pressure, that's why they are trying to do this, or is it just they wanted to make position themselves as they are very health conscious person, and but they are, what actually do is they're not. So these things you can capture here, and then what they think versus what they feel. So people might think that they're not really scary with looking at horror movies. They might think about that, but when they actually look at this horror movie, they might actually feel that scary thing inside them. So that's also different. What they think versus what they feel is also very different. So this map really helps you to understand the what exactly is the need. So not everybody will tell you that this is what I want. That might be true sometimes, but that might not be true sometimes. So this matrix will help you to differentiate, or try to make sure that you are capturing actual insights by observing as well. So when they say something, you also try to observe and see whether they are actually doing it or not. So that's where your empathy map would help in visualizing your user behaviors. And then you have the journey mapping, where you try to visualize this whole the journey, like w- at least taking a certain scenario. Like, for example, in the case study that I have shown, maybe when a kid is going to the hospital, like from the moment they decided that they want to take the kid to the hospital, to the moment where the kid had went to the hospital and they came back to the home. So if you want to document all that journey process, so how would the kid parent emotions would be throughout the process. How would they feel in the initial part, how would they feel in the middle, how would they feel at the end, and then how do you, and then that this journey mapping would help you to understand, okay, where can we really focus, and how can we shift this journey to be made to be a delightful process. So when you want to make the whole experience as delightful, you can't just take one segment and make it delightful. The whole experience has to be there. So that's why the journey really helps you to understand what exactly is happening, how can we make something really impactful. So it's not just affecting one part, but it's also increases the whole experience, the journey experience of the journey that people are having when they're visiting the hospitals. So, and then we have defining the persona. So here, understanding your users. So here, in our case, the users that we have is the clinician, the maybe doctor, nurse, parent, child, or the caretaker who's coming with the parent. So all of them will have different goals, different frustrations, and their different, their own needs and things. So you have to, when you do the research, right, when you do the empathizing thing, you have to do empathize with all these personas. and try to gather the data of all these things, these people, so that because they are all a part of the ecosystem. So whenever you do something, design something, that should fit for all of them. Like when I say, of course, the end user is the kid, but it should be also be easier for them to use it, so that the experience could be delivered to the kid, right? So if you make something which is not really easier for them to use, but it's good for the kid, that might not really work. So that's where in the case you try to understand all the different users, what are their goals, their frustrations. So that this is another artifact that we use to gather all the data and then present it in a way that it's easier to consume. And after that we do go to the define part. So till here we are just trying to representing all the research that we have done in a consumable format, so we can use it to do the defining our problem statement analysis. Okay, so before we move here, I would wanted to stop and ask if you guys have any questions. Yes. Yes, Lakshya.
So, as you have mentioned that about the user, so how we know about that? What does the user say, think, and does and feel?
So that you have to ask them. Let's say what they say. What they say is you can just directly ask them, and then you will get the answer. And after they say it, you would probably, I mean, what they actually do is you can ask certain questions which might not be a direct answer to for you to understand what they actually do, but you will get it in the other way. Let's say, for example, when I said about the sweets thing, right? So many of them will say that I don't eat sugars because I wanted to be fit and all of that. But you might, in the conversation itself, you might just maybe offer them, hey, today is my birthday, do you want to taste? Or they might, the first instant that they would do is maybe they would just take one and then eat it, or that's just an example that I'm giving. But there would be multiple instances that you actually see that difference, even in your friends, right? Whatever they say is what not they do. I think most of them will say that I wanted to get up in the morning and go for a walk, go for a running, go to gym, but none of them will actually do that. Only few of them would do. So that's the difference, what do they say and what do they do. Even thinking and feeling is also the same. So I think that you should have that ability to differentiate or observe what's exactly is happening. So always having that researcher lens in you when you see things. So you can actually start with when you are just experiences in your daily life, right? When your mom would say something and she might do something else. So why is that happening? Why is she saying that? Maybe you can just sit and ask because she's your mom, but sometimes the user might not be able to communicate that. So for that, you have to understand and you have to do your own research analysis to actually think why exactly that would happen.
All right.
Okay, next. Who wants to go? Sure, Prem. I will try to reduce my pitch, or I mean speed. I know I always talk a little fast, but yeah, please. Thank you so much for saying that. Okay, who wants to go? Nimisha.
Yes, I actually had two questions. So first one is like, let's say, when you have like a business statement, a business outcome to go after, you still know where you want to, what your starting point is. Like you'll have a specific industry defined, you'll know your user or something like that. But let's say you want to start like from ground up. So when exactly this, I don't know what this phase is called. It might be even before the discovery. Like I, as an individual, if I want to understand what problems are out there, how do I even decide whether I want to focus with a personal problem statement where I want to focus on a specific domain related problem statement, or I want to understand what a specific group of people might be facing a problem. So even before I begin understanding their empathy and journey mapping, etc., how do I make sure that I'm targeting the right person or domain or a specific industry? How does that work? Like,
So, unfortunately, all these ideas that you gather should go through this process for you to decide whether it is right or wrong. Even if you
okay.
have a business goal, right? Once many a times when you do this whole researching part, and then when you come to the defining part, the business goal that you are aiming for might be completely different that when you come to the end of your first diamond model. So I
Okay.
might assume that my business goal could be, let's say for example, I might think that I have the okay, this is just a thought that I'm just having, because with the example that I've talked before, where you wanted to maybe make sure the medicine that you're giving to the child, you want to make it
Mhm.
sweeter, or maybe some little bit of good experience when they're having it. So that could be your idea that you might just come up with, and then you wanted to test and validate it. But when you do all of these processes, you will realize that it is not easy to modify a medicine, right? You
Mhm.
or it's not, maybe medically it might not be possible, or you wanted to I mean that it might be possible that it would take a lot of time to experiment
Oh.
that and get it approved by the FDA and get all of these things done. So what is the best thing that you could do within the time that is given to you? So that way of thinking had completely changed your business goal,
Mhm.
right? The product that you are selling is completely changed, but you got a validation that people would use this, people would love this, and there is a need for something like this, is what you have got to the research. So so there are many instances that your business goal would change after the research, because not everybody will do this intense of research that a UX person or a design thinking, whoever follows the design thinking process, actually will be able to do that.
Uh,
Understood.
I think Varshini, your question was a bit different.
Yeah.
She mentioned, I think what Nimisha wanted to say was, if actually initial brief only, we are not sure what to take. For example, I might be having problems in maybe multiple domains as well. It could be edtech, or inside edtech also multiple things. Then how to evaluate before coming to initial brief?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that would come with, I would say, take an idea where you feel that this might really work. So your intuition will say right, maybe I think out of these 10, maybe these two would really work, or these three. So you could prioritize based on what your intuition is saying and what is the data in the market, like what is market saying. So you can get it easily through Google search, what are the trends that are happening. So that will help you to shortlist your ideas maybe to one or two, and through that choose one that you would want, which is easier to start off with, and follow this process, and you will get it validated whether it is worth to do, or whether the market is actually need to get this problem solved.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. And my second question was like, uh, where you mentioned that there's like, I just want to understand like what has worked best for you when it comes to when you're doing empathy mapping, understanding the flows, journeys, and also making the personas. So is it like, do you follow only one path out of these three, or a combination of all of these three things when you want to discover the problem statements? What
So
has worked best for you?
when I started, right, so I did all of these three, because when
Hmm.
you start, it is really hard to have that thing in your mind about empathizing. Empathizing will is a skill that you get when you practice it a lot. And when I started, I used all these artifacts. I used to follow all of them. I used to sit hours and hours together to do the empathy mapping, to do multiple empathy mappings for each user. Let's say I have talked to 10 users, each user will have an empathy map. And then after all these interviews, I would have like one empathy map that would represent all these users. So this exercise will really help you to build that skill set of empathizing, of understanding the journeys. So if you ask me now I wouldn't do, because I can analyze it just by looking at the interview or listening to the interview for what exactly the user is trying to say. So over the period of time, I think the number of artifacts that you use will reduce, because your skill is getting increased, right, so far.
Got it. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, next, who wants to go? Just come on, unmute yourself. I think we have four more people raised. Okay, we go to Kritika.
Yeah. So I was thinking about the user journey, and in context of IDEO itself, I mean, if we go back to before the solution was built, there would have been the journey of the child, like when he or she comes into the office, then the process of the medication, and then aftercare.
Yeah.
So there are problems everywhere. I mean, and there could be solutions in every stage, like improving the aftercare, maybe creating.
Yeah.
So how do, as a researcher, if I'm on the research team, how do I identify which part of the journey to either prioritize or decide that this is the main part, like this is the main problem?
Yeah, so that comes from your starting point. So let's say you will start with a problem that you have identified, right? And then you validate that problem through your design process. So when you remember the initial design thinking diamond model that we have, the first thing is you have a general problem statement. So the problem statement could be how could I increase the child's experience when they're taking a medicine, right? So when you do that, you have to consider the whole ecosystem and then what goes into all of these phases, and you can identify that, okay, I think this part, let's say for example the medicine giving part, is a major factor contributing to the overall experience of the child being in the hospital. That could be something that you might identify after the research. So that's itself a data point for you to prioritize. Okay, this could be something that we can target, which will contribute to our goal, where the goal is to increase the experience of having a medicine, right? So I think having one goal initially, like the problem statement, and then uh, taking that as an anchor point, and then moving forward, and then validate, okay, whether this anchor point is right or wrong. And if it is wrong, then choose another anchor point. Right. So,
Thank you.
okay. Next, we have Devi Sharma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Shri. Well explained, especially empathize phase. Actually, I wanted to ask, a lot of time we do lot of processes, which means we do interview, we do contextual inquiry. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it has a trade-off. But when you work as a product manager, you get a problem statement. It is very vague. You don't have any idea what is this, and your manager tells you this is what you need to solve. Then what happened? You try to gather some data around that certain pointers. A lot of time when we are beginner in the company, and I'm telling you the use case of real estate, you cannot cross question them immediately and ask good questions, which means if you're asking good questions, you're going to get good context, which means who is the user, what is the environment, whatever it is. So a lot of the time, the situation in the startup kind of phase where you are exploring building something, personal projects is very different, and the org is very different.
Yeah.
So you don't even know the metric when they give you a problem statement, because they never give it in a way of metric ke type se. So defining a problem statement itself becomes a very hard challenge. So how do you tackle that? And as a designer, because I have been transitioned from design to PM, I know the process was very extensive, but the repercussion of that process is you take a lot of time while you can do it more quicker as a PM.
Yeah. So, okay, I think there's so much that you mentioned. So I think identifying the problem, and as you were mentioning, right, like you won't get an actual problem that is given to you. It's very vague. I think many a times it will be vague. So I think as a designer, what I actually do is I sit with the PM. I actually understand, okay, why do you think this is a problem? The first question I ask, irrespective of whether I'm having the domain knowledge, irrespective of whether I have like lot of experience, but this is a very basic question that you can ask, no matter whether you are a fresher or an experienced guy. So he or she will tell you that, okay, we think this could be the problem that people are facing based on ABC. Your ABC could be your support data, or you could be the next, that's what is happening in the market trend, or your competitor is doing this, right? So, and then you ask, okay, how do you measure whether the problem is solved? What is the metric that he or she is associating with that problem with? So that's another metric that, they will give you that. So what what as a designer or the PM, what I think what you could do is sit on that problem and actually think whether, okay, maybe you can just think you as a user, right? You can empathize, you just wear a user hat and go through that and then see, okay, whether this is a problem. Maybe I think most of the times PM will come and say that we want to increase the adoption rate by 20%. That's not a problem, that's a metric, right? So to achieve that metric, you have to first identify the problem, because only certain problems can help you achieve that adoption. Not everything can help you in achieving the adoption, right? So that's when the user research will come into place, where you will take the product, you will analyze the whole flow, you will get the data analytics team involved, you will see, okay, where people are dropping off, why people are dropping off. You will go and ask the questions with them, have interviews. Also depending on the time, right? So if you don't have time, you will just take the data analytics tool, you will get the data, you will see it, you will see, okay, I think at this page people are dropping off, too many people are dropping off. Then you will go there and you will actually see, okay, what's exactly why it is happening. You will get recordings of people using the product. You will do the analysis part, and then you will identify, okay, this is the problem, which we solve could increase the adoption by certain percentage. So that's when you find the exact problem which can directly affect to the metric that he's mentioning, he or she is mentioning, right? So I think questioning a lot and trying to understand from where they're coming, and trying to understand how we can associate a metric, and what problem can be a direct contributor to the metric that we have defined.
Yeah, makes sense. So what tools do you use to do your synthesis of analysis? Like Excel I think so, is much better because the thinking is structured. But sometimes when you go FigJam, you kind of think a lot. So
Yeah, I think usually I would prefer doing it in FigJam, as you said, because it gives you a lot of, it's like a whiteboard, right? So you can just post your ideas there, do some analysis. And if I have like so much interview data, interview scripts, nowadays I'm giving it to Notebook LM, which is really doing a great job in trying to help me summarize these things. So I think, yeah, AI tools and also FigJam, and I usually don't do it alone. I will have somebody else there who always keeps challenging me or give a lot of insights. So I think that really helps a lot in identifying good insights.
good. Thanks for the information. Yeah.
I think Varshini totally agree with what you said. But I think for this specific question, I would also like to get, I think, Rahul's views as well. I think Rahul is also here, who works at Google as a researcher. So Rahul, in your organization, how do you deal with it in most of the cases if time is not there for research and you need to scope it? Would love to know your views as well on this.
Sure. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a little different. I mean, the way I would look at it, and it's something. It may be something which not everybody needs to agree with. Just I think it's a personal preference in certain cases. Is that while research is one way of getting data, there's primary data, there's secondary data, and there's analysis of data. And collecting data is super expensive and not always easy to do. Like we were talking about kids, for example, it's not all, you need extra permissions to speak to kids. You need to get logistics involved, which is not always easy. So I think the mindset that I have is the more the data, the better. But whatever data you have is the best data you can get. So the way I would look at it is, let's see what's possible, and then make do with whatever is there. And today we have a plethora of tools to analyze the data. So I'm imagining that Notebook, like she's talking about, is fantastic. I mean, I definitely use it a lot as well. But you'll also, it's a lot of fun to play around with the data as well. So even if you don't have a plan in mind, you never know where the correlation comes.
Yeah.
So finding these patterns is where the experience will come, and that just comes with more looking at it again and again, more in different ways, speaking to more people, even if it's not data per se, sharing a perspective with your PM, with your designers, with other team members, even in this group, it kind of just helps you gain perspective and think differently. I hope this helps.
Yeah. It definitely helps. In fact, you are kind of revolving conversations around OKRs, and it makes you think deep enough. And playing with data is really important because data makes you think back again on the problem. So yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, we have Frijita.
So I have question from the IDEO example. I have this question that does FDA provides design guidelines that what sort of medical devices needs to be designed?
I think it wouldn't give you the design guidelines as such, but it gives you compliance guidelines. Like, it helps you design something which is compliance, like where there should be you should have like documentation provided. Like, say for example, when I was working in a medical equipment company, we have to provide the user test analysis report. So, what that report is, um, all the errors that user might encountered during the process, like in the workflow, and what is the mitigation that I'm providing for that error, and what is the severity of that error. So, is that error making them stop the workflow? Is that error really severe that people cannot, or it's affecting a patient health? Is that the kind of an error? If that's the case, then what is the workaround that I provide to mitigate that? So that documentation is really very important. So that's an example. That's a compliance document that we give to make sure it passes through FDA. So there are like that. We have multiple other documents that has to be given. So they don't really tell you that you have to design it in such a way, but they tell you that they whenever you create an experience, that experience should be compliant enough that I think if the experience is good, it will be for sure passed through the compliance. But there are certain documentation that you have to provide so that it goes through the process.
Okay, so if there is some conflict, like the team is thinking or the company is thinking certain design guidelines, which they think that it will be user friendly or what they want for the product, but it is against the FDA or something, like FDA is not, satisfied with the thought process of the company, then at that kind of situation, what will happen?
I think usually those situations won't come in place. I think so. I think it more comes from a point of view where, so why would an FDA say we shouldn't do, right? So they have a problem with that. So you will sit with them and then you understand, okay, what is the problem? Uh, it it shouldn't hinder the user experience, at least with the product point of view. So whatever you do always will be a good thing for the user, right?
Like if I take this example, like for the kids, they were making this product, like they were thinking more on like how can they make the product attractive to the kids so that they will like to use it. But in it can be a situation that there can be certain hygiene or certain situations, because in hospitals it can happen that mass number of people come per day. So in certain kind of situations, like if we use that product in government hospitals, like their sanitization issues can occur. So at certain things, I think FDA might ask or raise questions. So how do the design team deal with it?
So I think you have to, answer that question, right? So whenever you give the solution, right? So even if it is not in the government hospital, if it's a normal private hospital, the hygiene is a main thing. So I think when you provide a solution, these are the factors that you have to consider by default to get it approved. And when you say maybe in the government hospital they might not follow the protocol that it has to be followed to use this product, I think it all depends on, okay, I mean, I don't know whether FDA will say that, but you can design something where you have to it might force people to follow the protocol. That's one way of doing it. I don't know how you will do it, but you can just think about it. But I think yeah, whenever you do, you will, of course, if it's something related to medical equipment or in the medical field, you have to take care about all the protocols that FDA is asking you to follow, and that has to be done for sure. Even if the experience is bad, you have to follow that no matter what. So, but as a designer, what we do is try to make sure the experience is also in balance with what the guidelines are saying.
Okay. Okay.
Varshini, I guess before taking more questions, we can cover whatever you wanted to cover first. And also, you wanted to walk them through a real case study on what we did so that they would also get an idea
Yeah.
about, okay, this is the thing which we have covered so far in real life on a real problem, how we can even apply those principles. So, you wanted to walk through a simple 10-15 minutes case studies as well.
Okay.
You can park questions at the end, and people who have questions can stay in the end.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. What I have. Okay. I think I just have few slides about defining part. So once you complete the research part, so how do you define a problem statement? Like once you do your personas, journey maps, and all of that. So how do you define your statement? So I'll just walk you through that. I think the more details about this process can be more understood through the case studies that Pravins and Athar will share. Okay, so
Yes.
okay, right. So after we do this research part, like all the artifacts, now we try to define the problem space. Like you have, so in the research you will have like so much data that you have gathered, and how can you prioritize, focus on a certain part to move forward for the current sprint cycle, maybe for the current scope of work that you want to build. So that's where defining would come into picture, and this also will have like all the insights that you gather throughout the research. And you will also have the product team involved into it, so that they're also aware about how this definition will match to the business goals that they are trying to achieve, or how this definition will change the business goal that they want to achieve based on the data that we have found. So that's where we do the how might we problem statement. So we try to define the problem, like how might we increase the okay, maybe for the example that I just talked about, the IDEO, the problem saying the how might we for this particular case study could be is like how might we make sure the child is excited to go to a hospital to get the medicine, right? So that's a maybe a how might we that we can define based on the research, and then you can break down that into multiple cases. Okay, to achieve this problem, define this problem, or to solve this problem, like what are the different things that goes into it, which where we can solve the this problem that we have identified. So where you do the analysis, like breaking down the smaller concepts, complex concepts into multiple different things, like you for this problem statement to be defined, you will have these research that you have done as a base, and from there you try to define it, and then you do the ideation part, like you do analysis and synthesize. Like you will take the research, you can have multiple different problem statements, like one could be, at least in this case, increasing the how might we make kids more excited to go to the hospital, or how might we reduce the stress for parents to take their kids to the hospital. That could be one. There could be how might we make clinician time, how might we make clinicians use their time more effectively when they're taking care of a kid. So there could be multiple things that you might have, and each will have its own priority, own different data that you can support, or why you have chosen this. Because I think these are the data that you might have found. Let's say, for example, when I say when I said about the problem statement of how might we make sure the clinician or the nurse is using her time effectively during the child care, this problem statement might have come from a data point where you might have gathered that clinicians or the nurse is spending so much time in giving an injection to a child because the child is not cooperating. So that could be a data, that point that you have got through the research, which maybe you have observed it, or you got it from an interview, or somebody have told you that. So that's a data point that you have gathered, and you are converting that data point into a problem statement. Like, okay, how might we make sure that their time is used effectively? So to solve this problem, there could be multiple solutions that you can think about, which can be very wide. And then, I mean, in the solution part, we can discuss more about how would you prioritize the solution, how do you scope down to one solution for the problems that you've identified. Yeah. So. Questioning can frame a problem while revealing our assumptions. So I think the way you question really helps you get lot of insights. Even with the researching part, I think Rahul could be a better person in helping you understand how do you question without making people biased with the answers that they give. So I think those also will play a very important role in gathering right data, like valuable data. Yeah, I think so far this is what I have.